Hello, this is Kade, and we have ourselves a new tank, the Tumbril Storm. And it looks really dumb, which is why it is actually so much better than the Nova has been. Because this is what somebody is going to design when you tell them, make me a tank, it is science fiction, I don't give a shit about what we have these days. Just make something that looks cool. That's when you make something like this. The Nova, which is, this hideous, ugly thing, that's what you get when you tell somebody to make a tank and put it in a game, without them realizing what sort of a game it is. Because it still looks like a normal tank, it is just ridiculously sized, like this thing belongs in Warhammer 40k or something. Not in a game like Star Citizen. So yeah, I'll still never really like the Nova. It's just, I really don't like the design. But we have the Storm. We have something shiny and new, so let's talk about a shiny and new thing. Because that's the most fun, of course. So this is what they call a assault vehicle light tank. And it is a single occupant machine. So that's already quite interesting. And it is potentially could be fairly interesting as a combat vehicle overall. So here, like blah blah blah, some of the lore behind it. There's lots of like, look at us, we are really cool. We are driving very fast. And this would indicate that maybe it has a good amount of speed. This is a very interesting concept piece, I think, because it shows you just the very limited visibility. And clearly like you're looking through a display here, so this is not a direct view screen. Because we don't see any view screen here in the front of the tank. So probably it's around here and you can just see, okay, that's completely covered. So you're watching a screen and not through a windshield. A couple of MFDs, so probably 4 here in total. The way it looks right now should be enough for our purposes. Your field of view, of course, is going to be relatively restricted, which, yeah, you can argue is not great. On the other hand, it's also sort of fitting. But also considering this is a one-person vehicle, and the turret is also set to be remote. I assume we can also enter the remote turret. What I do hope is that they allow us also to drive the tank itself while we are in that viewpoint of that remote turret. If they do that, then this becomes a really interesting vehicle for ground combat. And I'll go into more detail about that later. So we have single operator seat, they have some weapon racks because, have some storage places, and this thing is wide and silly, so you need to do something with it. Size 3 autocannon, so I'm not sure if they mean with this a repeater or if it's going to be more of a single shot thing, but considering it is Hurston Dynamics and we primarily know them for their attrition laser repeaters, it may be a repeater style weapon, but may also be somewhere in the middle. So instead of like single shot what you have with the cannons and there's the pew 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 from the repeaters, it would go more like boom 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 boom. So a slower repetition of fire. Lengthwise, it is about 5-6 meters shorter than a Nova. It is actually 0.5 meters wider than a Nova, and it's 1.4 meters shorter than a Nova. And that one is going to be really important. And I'll show you when we look at more the spec sheet there. We said single size 3 remote controlled turret. Some more really cool shots that they made about them. And you can clearly see like this is a very concepty vehicle. I don't even think this one would be in grey box state at this point. So it's, typical Star Citizen. Like they still release some of the JPEG concept files. I'm not really opposed to it. We see more and more stuff that's Ghostlight ready, so it's fine by me. And you can see here just like how wide and squat this thing is. And that may be a bit of an issue sometimes in getting through terrain, but it could also mean that we have a lot better stability when we're moving around, especially in these low gravity worlds, which is something that we have to deal with being in Star Citizen. A lot of the places that we are fighting on will probably be very low G. And then having your machine to be wider, it is less likely to be bouncing around in very dangerous angles, so it could help a fair bit in that aspect. And not flip it over, so to speak. It would be kind of more of a challenge to do. Size-wise, it's probably still going to be limited to things like C2s, 890s right now. It may fit also in a Carrack, I'm not sure. We'll have to see how it compares to, say, a RSI Ursa. No, I'm on ground. So yeah, that's 7.6, and that pretty much fits just inside of a Carrack bay. So yeah, you're still going to be limited to running this from a C2 style ship, A2, M2, whatever. And the 890 can also fit it in its vehicle bay, and maybe later on, of course, some other, like the Liberator can also naturally field this thing into other ships. But it's fairly sizable, despite being like an assault vehicle light tank. But it looks really cool. So price-wise, we're looking at $70 war bond, 80 in credits. This, of course, price is inclusive my VAT of 21% here. And for the concierge members, you can buy it inclusive this Storm Summit paint, which I think looks really quite nifty when it comes to paint. So yeah, kind of like it. Now, one of the reasons I said like going to is that usability, and if we can operate the machine in its entirety from the remote turret, is the layout of this tank. You can see that the turret is high above, it's just the weapon system, which means it is a really small target, which is a benefit. It is relatively far forwards, which can also be very much a benefit because we need to expose less of the vehicle. And I'm not sure if this is going to be the case, but it looks like potentially that this turret could be raised up a little bit. So there's some movement in here that would allow this turret to go up even higher. If that is the case, this machine is going to be an absolute bridgeline warrior. If you ever play games like World of Tanks or War Thunder, when it comes to the ground vehicles, you'll know all about the importance of using ridges and hills to expose as little of your machine as possible to enemy fire. And this machine will definitely be able to do that much better than a Nova would, because a Nova on its own is already much larger, but it also, for it to expose itself, it needs to expose a lot more of the much more larger turret, which can be engaged then a lot more easily, versus a machine like this with a very small target, especially if the turret can go up a little bit. If you have any good decent terrain around that you can use, it can be really hard for ground vehicles to engage this when it's in a good entrenched position. So that's, for me, a very interesting use case of this and why I like it potentially a lot more. But we have to really see it, because it's all about, can this turret move up? And if it move up, then it would be even better. Even without it's already good. But primarily, are we allowed to drive this machine when we are inside of the remote turret position? Because that's going to be the deal breaker. If you can do that, then you can just have an immensely powerful vehicle in this machine. Now, component-wise, we're running these V-size things. I think that's supposed to be like 0, and it's just 1, 1, 1, 1, 1. So yeah, not a whole lot in there. Of course, single-size 3-gun. It's all relatively simple. If we compare that to the Nova runs about, double or triple the components that the Storm does. So it has more radars, it actually has a small computer, it runs 3 power plants, 2 coolers, and very importantly 3 shield generators. So it will have triple the shield HP that the Storm will do. On the other hand, as I said, if the Storm can be used properly, it is going to be potentially a really hard target to deal with. So its defense may come more from the fact that it's much harder to actually hit the machine, versus a Nova, which is just going to take shots all the damn time because it is just so damn big. Now, of course, the Nova has a benefit of the missile payload and that additional remote turret on top, which does mean that it can engage some aircraft as well. And that is going to be very important at some point if you're going to get strafed by lighter aircraft or things like that. Those missiles, the size 3 turret, it may actually size 2 turret may come in handy to try and deter people from attacking it. And of course, people, parking them on ridges have been able to snipe people with the main gun as well. Don't expect that to be something that's going to be happening a lot when people actually get used to fighting in combined arms warfare, so we're having infantry, tanks and airplanes flying all over the place, or in our case space planes. People will get used to, you know, not flying into straight lines, allowing themselves to be sniped by cannons like a Nova here. Then point, like, you're going to be wanting your own aircraft, or at least have a lot of AA present. And then it also comes to the fact where probably instead of having somebody operating this double size 2 weapon system, you may want them operating a more serious weapon system in a dedicated anti-aircraft vehicle, like for example the I think that's the Centurion, it was called, the big size 4 weapon systems on that 8-wheeled vehicle. That would do a much better job at that, of course. Of course, you need another one to drive that thing again. There are trade-offs to be made everywhere. But yeah, overall, I think the Storm is looking very, very interesting when it comes to be a ground vehicle, and I'm much more enthusiastic about the Storm than I have ever been about the Nova. And I really think what I like most about it is that it feels like there's not as much empty wasted space. There probably is, like, design-wise, a fair bit of empty space in here. It's still really quite large, and I don't know where all the components would have to be that all of this needs to take up so much space. But it doesn't feel like it, which already helps. It looks like a dumb science fiction tank, which really helps because we are in a science fiction universe, which is not all that brilliant with a lot of the things. So it fits in much better in that aspect. I like just the whole stance of it, the potential of it to be a ridgeline warrior, making itself really hard to hit. So when it comes to actual ground combat, if it needs to fight heavier opponents, at most what it probably would risk is maybe get its third gun blown off, but then the machine itself would still be able to survive, perhaps retreat, repair, put a new gun on it and go back into action right away. So overall it's just really quite nice. Price wise, of course, yeah, it is fairly steep. Most ground vehicles are really expensive, of course, when you look at compared to a little bit of a Nova, of course, which is here with, again, with the 21% VAT. That's a fair amount of difference in there. One could argue that the difference is what you're also going to get. It is, however, a much nicer value when you're going to compare it to the other ground vehicles from Tumbril. So if we go back to the main thing, Tumbril land system, like, it is the same price as something like a Cyclone AA, or most of the Cyclone versions that are like anywhere decent are pretty much around the same price as the Storm. And I think it's very safe to say that the Storm is going to be, especially in a combat scenario, a lot more useful than any of these Cyclone vehicles are going to be. And overall, I don't like the Cyclones because this open design doesn't make a whole lot of sense. I would want my people in here at least protected against small arms fire by also a ballistic protection, not just anything else. So right now you can just be sniped out of these things, so it doesn't make any sense to me. So yeah, really, really interesting little machine. Hope to see it somewhere soon in game. Probably not going to be very soon, but I hope that we may see it somewhere next year. I think it's going to be realistically the first time we'll see it, because there's not a whole lot on this thing that it looks like it would share anything with existing design languages and stuff that they have. So we'll have to wait and see what's going to happen. But yeah, I am enthusiastic about this one for a change. So I hope some other people are as well. Of course, wherever you're going to spend your money is entirely your choice. And in generally, I would not really recommend spending too much money on ground vehicles. Right now it may be fun to have one or two, but their value proposition is like that they're in game, they're just relatively cheap. So it's probably much better off to just buy them in game and not bother about having them as a pledge. But if you want to have one as a pledge, so you always have access to at least one, there you go. You can of course grab one. And yeah, that has been me for today. Not going to do the walkarounds as you noticed with the previous days for the showroom. I decided there's nothing new really there that is worth going over every single time, because the ships don't really change all that much anymore right now. So that's not going to happen. I'm still planning on fixing up, seeing if I get some live streams done, but I'm still working on getting the sticks all set up. I should have another longer weekend coming up, so maybe I can get it all sorted by then. But You'll see it if you are interested. It will just pop up at random, and at some point I'll guess look at the schedule. For now, thank you very much for watching, and I'll hope to see you around next time. Bye bye.